Hey everybody, today for you guys I have my top 10 books of 2016. I'm going to try to get this up a little bit early. That way if you guys maybe get some Barnes & Noble gift cards for Christmas, or if you are thinking about asking for books for Christmas, I think that these are terrific options. And I have a lot of different genres and different categories here to share with you guys. And so I think that no matter what types of books you like to read, you will find something within this collection that will suit you. And these truly just are my top 10 books of this year. I absolutely adore these books. I recommend these books to my friends, to my family, basically everyone I know, and now I'm going to recommend them to you guys. So let's just get on into it. I don't think I'm going to do this in any particular order just because it is too hard to try to narrow some of these books down. And some of them, like I said, are so different genre-wise, it's kind of hard to put one over the other. So I'm just going to grab from the top of the pile that I have over here sitting by me. And the first book that I pulled is Scythe, and this is by Neil Shusterman. This novel is about a utopian world where there is no disease, murder, really anything like that, so nobody can die. If you try to harm yourself, there are different like things in your body that can quickly heal you. You don't really feel pain. And so to control the population, there are these people called Scythes, and they are in control of basically killing people. And it's kind of a cool take on a utopian universe because while obviously this world is great, there's really no problems, there's no hunger, there's no war, there's really nothing bad going on. People live very, very happy lives. It sort of has this like dystopian element where there are these people who are put into this profession and they have to deal with this terrible burden day in and day out. And this novel just follows a boy and a girl who are apprentices for a scythe, and they are kind of set against each other for the ultimate scytheship. And it's just really interesting to see these characters develop, going from really being reluctant to do this to really starting to get involved and feeling like they can really make a difference if they do this. And it just sort of goes through them basically learning how to kill people for, you know, their job. And it's just very, very interesting, and it's perfect for anyone that kind of likes that dystopian kind of setting. But this is so different from anything that I've ever read. It's kind of dark, it's a little bit cruel, it's just really, really mesmerizing, and I went through this super quickly because it was just such a good read. Next is a book that I recommended at the beginning of this year. Some of you may have recognized this from a book wrap-up I did months and months ago. This is Only Ever Yours by Louise O'Neill. Thank you so much to the subscriber who recommended this to me, because I don't think I ever would have picked this up if I haven't heard of it, because I never see any booktubers talking about it, and this completely was off my radar. So thank you so much, because this is a book that I don't want to go as drastic as to say like it changed my life, but it truly had such like a deep impact like in me, and it just stuck with me so much. This is another sort of dystopian book where women are like lab created, I believe. I have to kind of refresh my mind on this one a little, but they're lab created and they are set into schools, and they are called Eves, and basically they are just made to be married off to men, and they exist solely for men's pleasure. And it has a lot of different sort of like feminist critique in it, but it's not like a full-on like heavy feminism book. It still has that young adult fantasy dystopian sort of genre in it, so it's a very intriguing read. And it just follows a girl as she goes through school, and towards the end of her school career has to kind of decide what 3 factions for a woman she fits in. And this just grabbed me so much because it's meant to be set in this dystopian world, but the world mimics so much of our current world, and what these women go through mimics so much of what women today go through. And so it's just crazy, the parallels, and it's frightening, but it's also very enlightening at the same time, because you really start to see some of the problems we have in our current day society that we really need to work on fixing when it comes to women's rights and things like that. So this is a fantastic, fantastic book. To me, this should be like required reading in school good. I think this is a book that everybody, especially though if you're a woman, you should read. It is amazing. Next is a book that absolutely broke my heart when I read it at the beginning of this year, and this is called I'll Give You the Sun by Jandy Nelson. I absolutely love this cover. It's just like super, super pretty. I love the little flaps and everything like that. It's just gorgeous. And this is about a set of twins as they sort of start to reach adulthood and start to go to college. It kind of jumps, I believe, between two time points. It starts when they're sort of in middle school, and then it jumps as they're starting to graduate high school and get into college. And it's just a young adult sort of contemporary read about these two people as they just start to experience a lot of family issues and internal issues, and it's sort of like a coming of age story, and it just has so much in it. I found myself really identifying with these characters and just the different trials and tribulations that they put themselves through, the amount of growth that they experience in this novel. It's just amazing. Like, if you love a good, kind of sad but also ultimately uplifting young adult contemporary read, this will totally be up your alley. I just love this book. Again, this is a book that I've recommended to people over and over and over again because it is just one of those that really stuck with me, and I remember reading it and just feeling like it was so powerful. Next, we have one of like my favorite guilty pleasure, I guess you could say, reads. I don't really believe in the whole like guilty pleasure idea, but this was just one of my like fangirl reads of the year, and it's A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J Maas. This year I read a crap ton of Sarah J Maas. I read the whole Throne of Glass series, or at least what it's up to now, and then I read Court of Thorns and Roses, and then this one, A Court of Mist and Fury. Obviously this is the sequel to A Court of Thorns and Roses, so if you want to get into this bad boy, you gotta read the first one first. But I'm showing this one in particular because I liked this one more than A Court of Thorns and Roses, like most people, and it's just such a fun series. A Court of Thorns and Roses was sort of like a Beauty and Beast retelling, but it was very loosely based off that. There were just sort of elements that were taken from that, but Sarah J Maas really turned it into her own, and especially once you get to this book here, I noticed different sorts of like fairy tales I think that she was sort of inspired off of. You can really get that feeling when you read these, but overall it is truly her own world, so don't let that necessarily attract you or unattract you to the series. But it's just a fantasy series about a girl named Feyre who gets stolen into the fairy kingdom after she kind of did something bad, and then that's sort of her punishment, and along the way she meets the high lords of all the different courts, and it's about her sort of assimilating into this fairy kingdom and all of the adventures that sort of just ensue with that. And it is such a good series. This particular one just, oh my gosh, I am not the type of person that like looks at fan art or reads fan fiction. I typically just don't get that invested into a series, but this book made me look at some Rhys and Feyre fan art because I was just so involved. I even skimmed over a little bit of fan fiction because I am so obsessed with this couple. I'm so obsessed with this entire world, and I cannot wait for the third one to come out. I am seriously just on the edge of my seat for that. And this is just one of those books that made me so happy because it kind of took me back into like my Twilight-y fangirl days, even though this is absolutely nothing like that. Don't let me, you know, steer you towards it or against it with that statement, but it's just got that like, oh, it's just got all the emotions, you know, it's just got that like intrigue, and it's just got that sort of obsessive nature about it where all I want to do is just read this and get super involved with this. So I absolutely love this, by far one of my favorite reads of this year. Next I have The Strange and Beautiful Sorrows of Ava Lavender. This is by Leslye Walton, and this is a magical realism book, and it's about a girl named Ava Lavender. She is born with wings, but still kind of set in our universe, hence the sort of magic realism aspect of it, and it's kind of got the feel of like a contemporary read, but then it has the little aspects of fantasy, and that's why I love magical realism, is that it just sort of combines like two of my most favorite genres, and it's so beautiful. It's heartbreaking and powerful like a contemporary read is, but it's at the same time whimsical almost in a sense like a good fantasy read is, and there are just so many things that happen throughout this entire book, and it is a relatively short read, so it's kind of crazy how much is jam-packed in here, but it picks up right away, and it's just an absolutely beautifully written book. I mean, oh my gosh, the writing style in here is amazing. The characters are well developed. The plot is fast-paced. Everything about it is just incredible. And again, it's just one of those books that just really stuck with me and I loved. Next is another Sarah J Maas. I sort of alluded to this previously, but this is Throne of Glass. I'm just showing this one in particular, even though this is just the beginning of the series. This year we had Empire Storms come out, and then next year the final book comes out out, which I'm like excited for, but also really sad about because I really got into the series this year. But I'm just showing you guys this one in particular because obviously this is where you start, and honestly Throne of Glass, like the first one, was one of my favorites. I loved this book. I just love the worlds that Sarah creates, and I love the way that she writes them. I love the way that she writes her characters, and I just find them to be so intriguing. This one is about a trained assassin who gets put into slavery and then has a chance to get out of slavery if she becomes the king's champion, and she is not a fan of the king at all, and she does not want to have to do the king's bidding or the king's killing, but at the same time she's a very strong-headed character and she wants her freedom, and this is her sort of ticket to that. So that's what this first novel sort of just goes through, and then as you know, of course, the novels go along, we get so much other stuff thrown into it, but it's an absolutely fantastic series. I turned my sister onto this and she really loves it as well. It's just so interesting, would highly recommend. All right, my memory card just ran out of space, so I had to switch that up real quick in case I'm in a different position here. But let's continue on. The next book that I have is Three Dark Crowns. This is by Kendra Blake, and this is another young adult fantasy novel. This is a story about three queens who are a set of triplets, and they are set in this world where these queens are always destined to have to kill off one another, and then the one remaining is the one that is crowned. And within this world we have a couple of different factions. We have the poisoners who do what they sound like, we have the elementals who again kind of do what they sound like, and then we have the naturalists who can control like animals and plants and stuff like that. I mean, obviously that one is probably like the most meh one out of the bunch, but that's sort of the point, is that we kind of have these different like sort of power struggles, and it's a very like kind of political fantasy book, but at the same time it still has like a lot of the fantastical elements of just a good all-around fantasy. It's just such an interesting story, and I saw that on Goodreads some people really liked this and some people like were kind of meh about it. I think it's amazing. Some people said that it's a little bit slow. I did not feel that way at all. Like, I was just so involved in these characters. I felt like they were developed so well, and just switching between the different perspectives of the three sisters was extremely interesting. And at first, really, this book is just, you know, it is the first, obviously, out of like, I think it might be like a trilogy or something like that, but it's just sort of setting up the entire world, and there is a good amount of world building and just character building in this, but for me this world was so interesting. Getting to listen to, you know, the poisoner sister who has to eat and take poison each day, and listening to the elemental who can control like fire and wind and all those different things, and then the naturalist. It was just so interesting to hear from all of these different characters and all these different perspectives, and also get the political side of it, where these sisters are being trained by people who want them to get the crown, because ultimately whatever faction's queen gets the crown is the faction that, you know, becomes the most powerful through their political system. I don't know if I'm making much sense. This book is, you definitely need to read it. It kind of starts to make more sense as you go along, but it's just so intriguing, and it left on such a cliffhanger. I just cannot wait for the next one, and I am just really into this entire world. I absolutely love this cover too. Like, I love black book covers, and to me this is just absolute perfection, and it's beautiful, and really it's what drew me in to read this. So would highly recommend this one. This is a great YA fantasy read. Next we have Salt to the Sea by Ruta Sepetys, and this is a young adult historical fiction novel that is set in World War II, and it is about a group of refugees who are obviously just trying to survive, and this follows multiple perspectives, and it's just such a heartbreaking read. I mean, but at the same time, the ending is just so, the whole thing is written so beautifully, and the ending is just so incredibly powerful. And this book talks about one of the deadliest times in maritime history. However, it is not very well known. When we think about, you know, deadly ships, we think of things like the Titanic and such, but the death toll of this particular event like completely dwarfs what happened in those events. And it's just so incredible that this is not something that is like taught to people, and this is not something that people hear about. I think especially amidst of a, you know, the current refugee crisis, this just like really hit me hard, because it made me get into the mindset of what it would be like to have to flee from so many different negative, awful influences, especially when a lot of these people, they're kids. They have absolutely no obligation whatsoever to be in the situation that they are in, and it is so incredibly sad. I absolutely like cried my eyes out through this book, but it's so important to read. I feel like sometimes the saddest books are the books that people need to read the most. They're the hardest to read, but they are definitely the books that are going to stick with you, and they're the books that ultimately might change your perspective on things or might give you just a wider glimpse of the world. And that's what I love about reading the most. And so for me, that's why this is one of my favorites. It's fast-paced, it's extremely interesting. I love historical fiction because I love the realistic ties in here. This is such a character-driven book, and it's just absolutely beautiful. Love, love, love this. Salt of the Sea is an absolutely amazing read. And even though this is within the young adult genre, because these refugees are sort of that age, I think this is a book that adults, you know, younger readers alike should read because it is just so incredibly powerful and these voices need to be heard. Next, I have a book that I finished very recently, and this is called I'm Thinking of Ending Things. This is by Iain Reid, and this is sort of like a thriller novel about a girlfriend and boyfriend who take a road trip to visit the boyfriend's family. And I don't want to give too much of this away because truly this is one of the best books to go into just completely blind. And I love this because it's very short. I finished this in one setting. Totally blew my mind. The ending is just one of those that when I finished this, I like set it down and I just thought about this book for like 30 minutes. And for me, that is truly the mark of an incredible read, when like I consistently find myself thinking about it and sort of piecing, you know, all the different puzzles together. And especially within the thriller mystery sort of genre, I think that that's very important that the book does that to the reader. This is one of those that I would totally read again just to gain a whole different perspective on. It is so good. If you are a thriller junkie, if you just love books that are just will completely like alter your reality, then this is one of those. It's creepy, it's dark, it's very unsettling, it's amazing. Could not recommend enough. And then finally, I have another sort of like sad but very important book to read. This is by Jodi Picoult, and this is called Small Great Things. I don't know if that's how exactly you pronounce her last name, by the way. I might have completely butchered that. It could be French, it could be like Picoult or something like that. I don't know. But this is a book that mainly deals with the theme of racism, and it follows a nurse who is Black. She works at a hospital as a labor and delivery nurse, and she ultimately ends up getting charged with a very, very intense crime, basically because of her race. And it just follows different perspectives. You get the nurse perspective, you get her lawyer, and then you actually get the person who's accusing her, the white supremacist, you get his perspective as well. And I just think that it was so well done, especially for a white author to write about these colored characters and for her to also write about a white supremacist. To me, that would just be so difficult to do it right. But Jodi, as you can read in the afterword, she talks about all of these different people that she interviewed to really make sure that she got these voices correct. Obviously, as a white person myself, I still just have like an outside glimpse of this entire topic, but it was just so insanely powerful, and it made me think about my own self and how I view things. And to me, that was just such an incredible experience, because not many times does the author, I feel like, turn the book around on you and make you sort of have to look at your own self and see what you're doing in your life. And I think that that is such a powerful and incredible thing to do. It's just so well done, beautifully written. The story itself is extremely intriguing, and just getting such different viewpoints on this story is really what I think made this special. To me, this is just one of my favorite, ultimate favorite books this year. I mean, obviously all of these are, but this is just the one that I truly just really fell for. I mean, this book affected me for like weeks after I read it. So I would highly recommend you pick this one up. This is just a fantastic read, and I think it is, again, one of those books that everybody should have to read because it is just so important. All right, and that is it. I think we finally finished this super long video. Hopefully I can edit this down a little bit, but I hope that this gives you guys a good idea of different books to ask for, maybe for Christmas, or again, just if you're wanting to stack up a good TBR before the end of the year. These are books that I would highly recommend. Please let me know what some of your favorite books were from this year. I love getting book recommendations from you guys because I have just found some of the best books that I've read through the year through you guys, and so I really appreciate that. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will talk to you all next time. Bye-bye.